Ingenuity, magic, betrayal. Walt Disney, a name synonymous with childhood wonder and enchanting fairy tales. Yet, beneath the sparkle of Snow White, there's a darker tale. A tale of stolen fortunes and silenced voices. Disney, the man who built an empire on dreams, was also the architect of one of the most significant pay disparities in the animation industry. His Snow White animators, the unsung heroes behind his success, were left in the cold while Disney's pockets swelled. Loved by many yet scorned by his own, this is the untold story of Walt Disney's grand theft. Get ready to pull back the curtain on the Magic Kingdom. Walt Disney decided to embark on the most challenging project the world had ever seen as far as animation was concerned. He used up all of his money, mortgaged his house, and even took out loans to fund it. Drowning in debts and worry, he put pressure on his staff with strict deadlines and even a promise to give them hefty bonuses when the production was successful. Fast forward to 3 years later, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs did over $2 million. All debts were paid and all accolades were given to Walt, but the staff waited and waited for their promised bonuses. Walt had deceived them, but they were determined not to accept it. This is the story of determination and resilience in the face of greed and power. A story that would not only change the industry, but the world at large. The man called Walt Disney, was he born with a gift? Or maybe he inherited his incredible work ethic? There is only one way to find out. In the early 1900s, not everyone was into stuff like art and drawings with the aim of entertainment. It was a bit unpopular, but on December 5th, 1901 in Illinois, Walt Disney was born. He grew up like any other normal child, but at a young age, he began to develop a burning interest in drawing and art in general. But these were not just hobbies. He intended to pursue them with every fiber of his being. And he did. In 1920, Disney enrolled in the Kansas City Film Ad Company, where he worked on commercials and short films. It was like taking a kid to a chocolate factory because soon Disney felt like he belonged in this world. Every single day, he became more and more interested in film, television, and entertainment. Little by little, his hobbies and vision began to expand. Beyond all that, Disney began to develop more skill sets that would eventually help him in the future. Unlike a lot of people his age, the older Disney became and the more things he saw and was exposed to, the more ambitious he grew. Most other people may have been satisfied working in studios and being mesmerized by all of its benefits, but Disney decided to do something a little more risky. In 1922, he started his very first animation studio. It was called Laugh-O-Gram Studio, and it was located in Kansas City. Combining animation and live action, the studio produced several short films called Laugh-O-Grams. It was a good idea for Disney at the time, and he invested a lot of time and effort into the venture, but sadly, only a year later, the studio ran into some pretty hefty financial difficulties and had to close down. All this was enough for any rational thinking man to give up, but Disney was no ordinary man. He was prepared to see his dream through, no matter the cost. So after the failure of Laugh-O-Gram, Disney made the extremely bold step to move to Hollywood. Shortly after, he and his brother founded another studio called the Disney Brothers Studio, which would later be called Walt Disney Studios. Just like the first failed studio, this one began to make short films that combined both live-action footage with animation. The short films were called Alice comedies. But because Disney had tried something like this before and failed, he had learned from his mistakes and was in a better position to give it yet another shot, and sure enough, the venture began to look more promising. His resilience was paying off. However, in 1927, Walt kicked into high gear by creating Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, one of their first animated characters. Again, it was a stab in the dark. No one knew if it would work, but promoted by a series of animation shorts, the character gained massive popularity. Walt could not be happier. Right before his eyes, his dreams were coming through. He went on to birth other characters like Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie. With renewed confidence, he launched them, but to his greatest surprise, they both failed. However, eventually they picked up, and soon after, Disney became a solid name in the animation industry. He had a great work ethic and worked with many employees. He was always fair to them, and all of these helped him build a stellar reputation. Based upon all these successes, Walt hatched yet another idea. But this one would require a considerable amount of resources. No one knew that this project would bring out the darkness in Walt Disney and create a story the world will never forget. The great undertaking. Children are normally affected by their environments and what they are exposed to, but Walt was a bit unusual. What he found exciting was just weird for other kids. Growing up in Kansas City, one of Walt's fondest memories was watching J. Searle Dawley's 1916 film, Snow White, in theaters. It was simply a magical experience, and not only did Walt enjoy it, even as a kid, he was both fascinated and inspired by it. Now that he had the means, the idea to recreate his version of Snow White consumed him so much that he had to execute it. But Walt was no fool. He knew that there was another side to this coin. This was no short animation like he was used to. This project would cost him a lot more, and he would need a lot more hands on deck. It would be the most expensive and difficult project he had ever undertaken in his entire life by far. But Walt was not going to back down. He was prepared to take the risk of producing the world's first full-length cel-animated feature film with both color and accompanying sound. It was risky, uncertain, and extremely expensive, so Walt committed all his resources to the project. He even mortgaged his own house while at it. The production would eventually take 3 whole years, and it consisted of a large team including 32 animators, 1,032 assistants, 107 in-betweeners, 10 layout artists, 25 background artists, 65 special effects animators, 158 inkers and painters, as well as countless other uncredited members of the production staff. In total, it also required 250,000 drawings to be animated, inked on celluloid animation frames, painted and photographed. But even with all these hands on deck, Walt did not think they would complete the project on time, and so he needed to be on top of the situation. This was when a seemingly suppressed side of Disney began to rear its head, a side of him that his staff didn't know he had and would drive them to the edge of frustration, the Disney promise. Walt felt fear and he felt uncertainty. His name was on the line. His reputation was on the line, and if this went south, it may very well be the end of him. He had to get this right. With each passing day, Walt grew more and more obsessed with the Snow White project, and as a result began to get a little impatient and hard on his staff. Everyone began to feel the pressure. Tensions were high in the studio during the critical period of production, especially in the months before the premiere. The stakes were high for Walt now, and he made sure his staff felt it. He had a lot riding on this. For one, during production, Walt realized that the budget was a lot more than he had anticipated. The initial budget was capped at $250,000, which is around $5.5 million in 2023. However, it spiked and became $1.5 million, which is about $33 million today, but he wouldn't let that stop him. He did all he could to raise funds and make sure money was no object. At this point, a lot more people in the industry began to catch wind of what Disney was planning, and to them, it was laughable. In fact, according to Michael Barrier's 1999 book Hollywood Cartoons, American Animation in its Golden Age, the situation was so dire that Hollywood executives and trade papers nicknamed the film Disney's Folly. All the more reason Walt became so obsessed with the project. He needed to prove everyone wrong and make this a success. He gave strict deadlines and worked his staff to the bone round the clock. But soon enough, he realized this was not enough. He needed to give them enough reason to work twice as hard, so he promised to give 20% of the project's profits to the staff to be shared among them. This made them very happy, and they believed him. Sure enough, Disney's plan worked. The staff members put in extra effort and worked with renewed morale based on the promise Disney had made them. But sadly, this was the beginning of the end for some of them. The long-awaited premiere. Despite all the pain, sweat, and tears, 3 years later, Walt had done it. He could not believe it. It took every ounce of his mental strength and his resources, but on December 21st, 1937, Walt Disney had done what no one else in the world had ever done. The highly anticipated premiere of Walt Disney's groundbreaking film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, took place, captivating audiences with its magical storytelling and breathtaking animation. The film's release in theaters nationwide was delayed until the following February, allowing Disney to build anticipation and generate buzz among eager moviegoers. Little did anyone know at the time that this enchanting tale would go on to become a monumental success that revolutionized the world of animation. The premiere of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was a pivotal moment in cinematic history. The film marked Disney's first foray into feature-length animation, a concept that many doubted could captivate audiences for an extended period. However, Disney's unwavering determination to push the boundaries of animation paid off handsomely. The premiere itself was a grand affair, with Hollywood luminaries and celebrities from all walks of life in attendance. The red carpet was adorned with the who's who of the era, as actors, directors, and industry insiders flocked to the prestigious venue to witness this groundbreaking cinematic achievement. The atmosphere was electric with excitement, as whispers of Disney's remarkable accomplishment echoed through the crowd. When the lights dimmed and the film began, the audience was transported into a world of wonder and magic. The meticulously crafted animation brought the beloved fairy tale to life in a way never seen before. The vibrant colors, detailed character designs, and seamless animation mesmerized viewers, capturing their imaginations from the opening scene until the final frame. It was a cinematic experience that left audiences spellbound. As the credits rolled, thunderous applause filled the theater, followed by an overwhelming sense of awe and admiration. It was clear to everyone present that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had transcended all expectations. The film's critical and commercial success was undeniable, grossing over $2 million, an extraordinary sum of money for that period. This financial achievement not only solidified Walt Disney's reputation as a visionary filmmaker, but also silenced the skeptics who had doubted the viability of animated feature films. The astounding box office numbers were a testament to the film's universal appeal, as children and adults alike were captivated by the timeless tale of Snow White and her 7 endearing companions. The success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs extended far beyond the monetary gains. Walt Disney, who had faced significant challenges and ridicule during the production phase, finally received the praise and recognition he deserved. Notable figures in the entertainment industry, such as Charlie Chaplin and renowned director Sergei Eisenstein, heaped accolades upon the film, acknowledging its artistic merit and groundbreaking achievements in animation. Their acknowledgement further solidified Disney's status as an innovator and pioneer in the field of filmmaking. However, amidst the celebrations and acclaim, there was an undercurrent of unease among the studio's staff. While Walt Disney felt pride and satisfaction with the film's success, the employees anxiously awaited the fulfillment of his promise to share the profits. They knew that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had generated an abundance of wealth, as the news of its tremendous box office returns was splashed across headlines. Moreover, the profits were more than sufficient to repay the loans Walt had taken to fund the ambitious production. With the studio debt-free and surplus funds available, the staff eagerly anticipated the promised bonuses. Yet, as time passed, the bonuses remained elusive. The studio employees, who had poured their heart and soul into the making of the film, began to question why they weren't reaping the rewards they had been assured. Their dedication and hard work contributed significantly to the film's success, and they eagerly awaited their fair share of the profits. Behind closed doors, tensions grew as the employees contemplated their next steps. They were torn between their admiration for Walt Disney's visionary leadership and their desire to secure what they believed they were owed. The situation simmered, and the studio atmosphere became tinged with a sense of apprehension. The employees yearned for transparency and open communication from the studio's management. They understood that the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs had elevated Walt Disney to unprecedented heights, but they also believed that their contributions should be acknowledged and rewarded. The situation called for a delicate balance between creativity and business, a challenge that would test Walt Disney's leadership and ability to address the concerns of his devoted staff. In the wake of the film's premiere, the fate of the bonuses remained uncertain. As the studio navigated the complexities of financial distribution, tensions continued to mount. The employees held on to the hope that their patience and dedication would eventually be rewarded. But soon after, it became clear to the animators and staff that they had been lied to. Walt was not planning on honoring his word and paying them their well-deserved bonuses. What happened next was the beginning of a historical story that echoes even today, the Shocking Revolt. It was clear at this point Walt Disney was a liar, while trade papers at the time reported that Disney's studio was going to distribute an estimated 20% of Snow White's earnings among the studio's 800 employees. The actual bonuses those artists received were equal to or less than what they had previously received for the studio's short films. Walt was trying to cheat the animators despite how hard they had worked on the project and they were not going to have. This is where a certain personality came into the scene. His name, Babbitt. Now, Babbitt was not just a regular staff member. He was so good at what he did that he had been promoted shortly after he joined Disney in 1932. His work was impeccable, and he delivered on time. It did not take long. Babbitt became renowned around the studio for being a great talent and a top artist. He had the respect of the staff, and this was devastating for Walt because, as a result of the failed promise, Babbitt himself became a notable personality that led a strike movement within the studio. It was a revolt, and now Walt was under pressure. Babbitt quickly moved from being one of Walt's favorite and most valued animators to being the key player leading the animators' strike. The lingering animosities over unfulfilled promises and unpaid wages following Snow White's production were a sticking point for workers like Babbitt, and he became obsessed with getting justice. But Walt Disney was stubborn, and despite all, he still refused to rectify the discrepancies in pay among his employees or address their other workplace concerns in good faith. The battle line was drawn.
As Captain Jean-Luc Picard once said, the line must be drawn here, this far, no farther.
Almost as if to rub it in their faces, Walt put a whole lot of money into other vain and surface things around the studio for comfort. Tensions between artists and management continued to mount in the years between Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs release and the months before the strike. The money Walt promised to distribute among the workers instead went to the construction of a new Burbank campus for the studio, complete with lavish facilities such as industrial air conditioning, custom-made furniture, a coffee shop that delivered milkshakes to order, and a penthouse club athletics building, restricted to employees with a salary of $100 or more a week. Babbitt, even though he was a top staff member and had a great office and earned about $100 weekly, still decided to side with the staff and not with the management. He became a thorn in Walt's flesh. It was not until May 27, 1941, that things took a rather interesting turn. A group of 315 Disney animators decided to join the Screen Cartoonists Guild and voted in favor of going on strike. Walt was infuriated. Babbitt, who played a key role in organizing the unionization efforts, was dismissed on the same day. The reason given for his dismissal was that he had affected the morale of the employees and disrupted the production process. The following day, the Disney animators finally commenced their strike, which lasted for almost 4 months. The tension and temper between the management and animators were high, and on June 12th, Babbitt and Disney were seen outside of the studio exchanging words and yelling at each other. The compromise. However, destiny had a different script in store. As the storm clouds of adversity loomed over the Disney empire, a glimmer of hope flickered amidst the chaos. Walt Disney found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of nationwide protests, where the collective voice of the animators echoed through the streets, demanding justice. In this grand theater of labor disputes, federal mediators entered the stage, their impartial gaze scrutinizing every move. Walt Disney, once the formidable maestro of animation, now faced an ensemble of formidable opposition. His brother Roy Disney and their inner circle of financiers, once staunch allies, now found themselves on opposing sides of this gripping conflict. Yet the weight of public opinion and the undeniable strength of the strikers proved to be an unyielding force. The deafening chorus of protests echoed across the nation, reaching the ears of even the most oblivious. The air crackled with anticipation as the verdict of the federal mediators loomed over the horizon, poised to deliver a decisive blow. And so, with a mixture of reluctance and resignation, Walt Disney made his choice. The defiant animators had triumphed, their demands etched into the very fabric of the agreement. Recognition of the Screen Cartoonists Guild was granted, a resounding victory for the men and women who had dared to dream of fair treatment and just compensation. But the concessions did not stop there. In a stunning display of surrender, Walt Disney conceded to the striking animators' demands. Wages soared to new heights, lifting the spirits of employees burdened by the weight of underappreciation, Weekly hours and overtime were standardized, providing a beacon of hope amidst the murky fog of labor exploitation. A figure once cast aside, a symbol of rebellion, now returned to the fold. Art Babbitt, the visionary whose dismissal had sparked the flame of revolution, was reinstated with dignity and honor. In a powerful act of solidarity, he was formally shielded from any retaliatory or discriminatory repercussions. The resilience of the striking animators had triumphed, carving a path toward a brighter future. The aftermath. At last the strike was over. The animators had won the battle, but there was still a little war going on. The echoes of the Disney animators' strike reverberated through the hallowed halls of the studio, leaving an indelible mark on its very foundation. As work resumed on the production of Dumbo, it was evident that the atmosphere and workplace culture had undergone an irreversible transformation. The once strong bonds of friendship that had flourished among colleagues now fractured along the stark divide of strikers versus non-strikers, igniting bitter feuds that poisoned the once harmonious environment. As a result, artistic talents, like leaves torn from a tree in a tempest, began to scatter. Babbitt, the driving force behind the unionization efforts, made the wrenching decision to depart the studio that had once been his creative sanctuary. Joining him in this exodus were illustrious names such as Bill Teitla, the mastermind responsible for animating the sinister Chernabog in Fantasia, and Frank Tashlin, a creative genius who had lent his talents to both Disney's story department and Warner Brothers. Iconic Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies shorts. These artists, compelled by a longing for better working conditions and artistic freedom, sought refuge in the arms of Disney's competitors, finding solace and opportunity at studios such as Terrytoons and MGM's Cartoon Studio. Yet, the Disney animators' strike of 1941 was far from being a mere footnote in the annals of animation history. It stands tall as one of the most pivotal milestones that shaped the American animation landscape. The strike birthed a creative force that would leave an indelible legacy. Without the strike, United Productions of America, the visionary studio responsible for groundbreaking projects like Ted Parmalee's 1953 adaptation of The Telltale Heart, and Robert Cannon and John Hubley's iconic Gerald McBoing Boeing, would never have come into existence. UPA's avant-garde and modernist animation style, challenging the conventional norms of the time, would go on to inspire a new generation of celebrated animators, including the visionary minds behind beloved animated series like The Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Laboratory. The far-reaching consequences of the strike continued to shape the course of animation history. Maurice Noble, a luminary in the field of art direction, recognized today for his awe-inspiring work in Chuck Jones' legendary 1957 short film, What's Opera, Doc?, made a momentous choice. Leaving the confines of Disney, he found a new home at Warner Brothers, where he would unleash his artistic brilliance and contribute to the timeless charm of the studio's animated masterpieces. The fight for unionization within the American animation industry, ignited by the brave actions of those Disney animators, remains an ongoing struggle that reverberates through the years. Today, the torch is carried by the Animation Guild, the modern successor to the Screen Cartoonists Guild. This steadfast organization has successfully campaigned to unionize and represent production workers across multiple animation studios, making a resounding impact at prominent companies like Titmouse, known for the Venture Brothers. As the industry grappled with the wave of strikes, it becomes imperative for both fans and industry professionals to recognize the power of collective action. The Disney animators' strike serves as a poignant reminder of what can be achieved when creative individuals stand together in pursuit of fair treatment, just compensation, and the protection of their rights. It serves as a cautionary tale to studios, urging them to acknowledge the perils of taking their creative talents for granted while solely focusing on profit. This was a huge scandal, and it soiled Walt Disney's reputation a bit, but it is still nothing compared to the dozens of other scandals that have occurred in the Hollywood industry. Click this video to check out other Hollywood outrageous scandals.